Hey guys, tonight we're diving into one of history's most deceptively dangerous places, the medieval bathhouse. Picture this: you wake up in 14th century Europe, your skin grimy from weeks without a proper wash, and someone mentions there's a bathhouse just down the cobblestone street. Your modern mind immediately conjures images of relaxing spa days, eucalyptus steam, and fluffy towels. But as you stumble through the narrow, refuse-lined streets toward what you think will be your salvation, you have absolutely no idea that you're walking into a social minefield that could leave you diseased, broke, or even dead before the sun sets. You probably won't survive this, and honestly, that might be a mercy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing our little global community of insomniacs and history buffs come together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning air hits your face like a slap from a damp fish as you emerge from whatever hovel you've been calling home. Medieval cities weren't exactly known for their pleasant aromas. Imagine a mixture of human waste, rotting food, animal droppings, and the occasional waft of something that might charitably be called cooking. Your nose, thankfully, has probably gone numb to most of it by now. But your skin tells a different story. It's been weeks since you've had what we'd consider a proper bath, and the layer of grime, sweat, and who knows what else coating your body has reached that special point where it's become almost protective. Almost. You shuffle through streets barely wide enough for two people to pass without bumping shoulders, dodging the occasional chamber pot being emptied from upper windows with the traditional warning cry of "Gardaloo" if you're lucky, or no warning at all if you're not. The cobblestones beneath your feet are slick with a combination of morning dew and substances you'd rather not identify, creating a treacherous obstacle course that would make modern parkour look like a leisurely stroll. The gutters running down the center of these medieval streets carry a constant stream of liquid that's part rainwater, part kitchen waste, and part things that would make a modern health inspector weep openly. As you navigate this urban wasteland, you pass the usual cast of medieval characters going about their morning routines. There's the baker, already covered in flour and sweat despite the early hour, kneading dough with hands that definitely haven't seen soap in recent memory. His fingernails harbor enough grime to start a small garden, and you can't help but wonder about the hygiene standards of his bread, though considering your current state, you're hardly in a position to judge. The blacksmith's apprentice stumbles by, his face streaked with soot and his clothes stiff with accumulated grime that's practically become part of the fabric. His leather apron has absorbed so much sweat, smoke, and metal filings that it could probably stand up on its own. Even the relatively well-off merchant you spot adjusting his hat looks like he could benefit from a good scrubbing, though to be fair, by medieval standards, he's practically gleaming. His woolen cloak might be expensive, but it carries that distinctive medieval aroma of sheep, lanolin, and months of accumulated wear. The gold thread embroidered into his sleeves catches the morning light, but even precious metals can't disguise the fact that personal hygiene in this era is more aspiration than achievement. This is the world where bathing isn't just uncommon. It's often viewed with genuine medical suspicion. The dominant theory of the time, inherited from ancient Greek and Roman traditions, but twisted through centuries of religious interpretation and plain old ignorance, suggests that bathing too frequently can actually make you dangerously vulnerable to illness. The prevailing wisdom, endorsed by the most learned physicians of the era, holds that hot water opens your pores like tiny doorways, making you susceptible to disease and corruption from the outside air. Many doctors actively discourage regular bathing, recommending instead that people change their linens frequently, a laughably impractical suggestion for anyone who isn't wealthy enough to own multiple sets of undergarments. The medical establishment has convinced much of the population that their skin acts as a protective barrier, and that washing away the natural oils and accumulated grime actually weakens this defense system. They point to the supposed health of peasants who rarely bathe as evidence that cleanliness might actually be harmful. It's a fascinating example of how even educated people can rationalize almost anything when it supports their existing prejudices or makes their lives more convenient. But here's where it gets deliciously contradictory. Despite all this official anti-bathing propaganda, bathhouses are absolutely thriving throughout medieval Europe. It's one of those beautiful historical paradoxes that makes you wonder if people have always been this skilled at ignoring expert advice when it conflicts with their actual desires. These establishments represent a fascinating collision between Roman bathing traditions that never quite died out, Islamic influences filtering in through trade routes and conquest, and the very human need to occasionally not smell like a combination of barnyard animal and rotting vegetation. The bathhouse you're approaching isn't just any building, it's often one of the most architecturally distinctive and strategically located structures in the entire medieval city. Unlike the cramped, timber-framed houses that lean into each other like drunken friends sharing secrets, bathhouses are frequently constructed of stone or brick, with carefully planned layouts that would impress modern architects. These buildings require sophisticated engineering to handle the constant moisture, heat, and structural stress of their intended use. You'll notice the steam rising from carefully designed vents and chimneys, creating an almost mystical atmosphere that announces the building's purpose from blocks away. The larger-than-normal windows are positioned to let in maximum natural light while maintaining the privacy necessary for the activities within. Many bathhouses feature distinctive identifying symbols carved into their facades, perhaps a stylized bathing vessel, a steam cloud, or even more explicit imagery that leaves no doubt about the establishment's primary function. As you get closer, the first assault on your senses is the sound. Medieval bathhouses are far from the serene, whisper-quiet sanctuaries you might expect from a modern spa experience. Instead, you're greeted by an absolute cacophony of human activity echoing off stone walls and amplified by the acoustic properties of enclosed, steam-filled spaces. Voices blend together in multiple languages and dialects, creating a linguistic soup that reflects the cosmopolitan nature of these establishments. There's the splash of water as people enter and exit the communal baths, the scraping of wooden buckets against stone floors, and the distinctive slap of wet feet on damp surfaces. Occasional bursts of laughter punctuate more serious conversations about business deals, political gossip, and personal affairs. You can hear the unmistakable sounds of various services being provided, some as innocent as hair trimming or back scrubbing, others decidedly more intimate and commercial in nature. The acoustic environment also includes less pleasant sounds that remind you of the medieval reality you're entering. There's coughing. Lots of coughing as people with various respiratory ailments seek the supposed healing properties of steam and mineral water. The sound of retching occasionally cuts through the general din, as some bathers react poorly to the heat, the water quality, or perhaps the previous night's ale consumption. Heated arguments sometimes erupt over perceived slights, business disagreements, or accusations of improper behavior, their echoes reverberating through the stone chambers like medieval surround sound. The smell hits you next, and it's a complex olfactory experience that would probably require weeks of acclimatization for a modern nose to fully process. There's the fundamental mineral scent of heated water, often drawn from natural hot springs rich in sulfur and other compounds that give the water its supposedly therapeutic properties. When bathhouses don't have access to natural springs, the water is heated in massive iron cauldrons over roaring wood fires, adding smoke and metallic notes to the aromatic blend. Mixed with this base layer is the soap, though calling it soap might be generous, as many bathhouses use a combination of wood ash, animal fats, and whatever herbs or oils they can afford. This creates a distinctive, somewhat acrid aroma that stings your nostrils while simultaneously promising some degree of cleansing power. The better establishments might have access to imported soaps made with olive oil or other more pleasant ingredients, but these are luxury items that significantly increase the cost of admission. Add to this complex the natural human sense of dozens of people in various states of cleanliness, plus whatever substances they're using to treat their hair, skin, or various medical ailments, and you've got an olfactory adventure that's simultaneously fascinating and overwhelming. There are herbal remedies being applied to treat everything from baldness to plague symptoms, creating additional layers of medicinal aromas that range from pleasantly botanical to aggressively pungent. But perhaps most striking about your approach to the bathhouse is what you don't see. The lines of desperate, dirty people you might logically expect. Bathhouses in medieval Europe aren't quite the democratic institutions you might assume from a modern perspective. This isn't a simple case of everyone gets clean eventually. It's more like, if you can afford it, if you're socially acceptable, if you understand the incredibly complex unwritten rules, and if you're extraordinarily lucky, you might get to participate in this strange ritual of communal cleanliness. The social dynamics at play here are more complex than the political structure of some medieval kingdoms. The bathhouse serves as a microcosm of medieval society, complete with rigid hierarchies, unspoken rules that can change without warning, and the constant potential for social disaster that could affect not just your immediate experience, but your long-term reputation and prospects in the community. Your success or failure in this environment won't just determine whether you get clean, it could fundamentally affect your reputation, your business prospects, your romantic opportunities, and in extreme cases, your actual physical safety and social standing in the community. One wrong move, one violation of bathhouse etiquette, one unfortunate encounter with the wrong person, and you could find yourself banned from not just this establishment, but potentially all similar businesses in the area. Historians still argue whether medieval bathhouses were primarily hygienic institutions designed to promote public health, exclusive social clubs for the wealthy and well-connected, sophisticated business centers where important deals were negotiated in privacy, or elaborate fronts for prostitution and other less respectable activities. The truth, as usual with medieval history, is probably all of the above, varying significantly by geographic location, specific time period, local political climate, and the particular establishment in question. What's absolutely certain is that bathhouses occupied a unique and often precarious position in medieval society. They were tolerated and even celebrated when times were good, economic conditions were stable, and local authorities were feeling permissive. But they were often among the first casualties when moral panics swept through communities. Economic troubles made authorities crack down on luxury establishments, or plague fears made people suspicious of any gathering place where bodies and bodily fluids mingled freely. As you approach the heavy wooden door of the bathhouse, adorned with iron hinges that have seen better centuries. You're about to discover that getting clean in medieval Europe isn't just a matter of wanting to wash, it's primarily a question of whether you can afford the privilege. The shock of medieval bathhouse pricing is about to hit you like a bucket of ice water. And trust me, you're going to need to sit down for this one. The doorkeeper, a burly man whose own relationship with soap appears to be casual at best, looks you up and down with the practiced eye of someone who can assess your financial worth from 50 paces. His leather apron is stained with substances you'd rather not identify, and his missing front teeth suggest he's either been in this business a very long time or he's supplemented his income with less legitimate activities. When you inquire about the cost of admission, his grin reveals more gaps than teeth, and the number he quotes makes your knees buckle slightly. A single visit to a decent medieval bathhouse typically costs between 2 and 6 pence, which might not sound like much until you realize that a skilled craftsman's daily wage is usually around 4 pence, and most laborers make considerably less. You're looking at spending anywhere from half a day's wages to more than a full day's earnings just to get clean. For context, that same amount of money could buy you several loaves of bread, a decent meal at a tavern with actual meat in it, enough ale to forget why you wanted to bathe in the first place, or a pair of decent shoes that would last you several months of hard wear. But here's where it gets truly absurd. That's just the basic admission fee. Like a medieval version of airline pricing, everything beyond the most minimal service comes with additional charges that seem specifically designed to extract every last coin from your purse. Want soap that doesn't feel like it's made from crushed glass and animal fat? That's extra. Need a towel that isn't basically a rough sack that will scrape your skin raw? More money. Desire hot water instead of lukewarm? Open your wallet wider. Want someone to actually scrub your back instead of just pointing you toward a bucket? Additional fee. The pricing structure is so complex that some bathhouses employ dedicated clerks just to calculate what you owe based on your specific combination of services. The doorkeeper pulls out a worn wooden tablet covered in scratches and notches that represent the various pricing tiers and service combinations. Reading it requires either exceptional eyesight or years of experience, and he clearly enjoys watching potential customers squint at the incomprehensible markings while mentally calculating whether they can afford their desired level of cleanliness. It's like a medieval menu where every item comes with surprise ingredients and the prices change based on who's ordering. The pricing system also operates on a sliding scale based on social status that would make modern economists weep with its inefficient complexity. Nobles and wealthy merchants pay premium rates, sometimes 10 times the base fee, but receive access to private chambers with carved stone tubs, the finest imported soaps scented with exotic oils, fresh linens that have actually been laundered, and personal attendants who cater to their every whim. These VIP facilities often include additional amenities like heated dressing areas, mirrors of polished metal, and even musicians to provide entertainment during the bathing process. The emerging middle-class successful artisans, prosperous shop owners, minor officials, and clergy members pay moderate fees for semi-private facilities that offer a reasonable compromise between privacy and affordability. They might share a bathing chamber with only 1 or 2 other patrons of similar social standing, and they get access to decent soap, clean towels, and water that's been heated to a comfortable temperature. Everyone else gets crammed into communal areas with water that's been recycled more times than medieval gossip. These facilities can accommodate dozens of bathers simultaneously, creating an atmosphere that's part social gathering, part endurance test, and part sensory assault. The water in these communal baths starts the day reasonably clean but gradually transforms into a murky soup containing contributions from every previous bather. This economic stratification extends beyond simple pricing into a complex reservation system that would make modern restaurant booking seem refreshingly straightforward. The best bathhouses operate on a schedule that prioritizes their most valuable customers during peak hours, typically in the afternoon when natural light is optimal. The water is at its freshest, and the staff is most attentive. Wealthy patrons can reserve specific time slots weeks in advance, ensuring they never have to wait or share their bathing experience with anyone beneath their social station. Some high-end establishments maintain waiting lists that operate like medieval country clubs, where prospective members must be recommended by existing patrons and demonstrate both financial capacity and social acceptability. The most exclusive bathhouses actually turn away paying customers if they don't meet certain criteria of wealth, status, or personal connections. Being rejected by a bathhouse can become a source of social embarrassment that affects your reputation throughout the community. Meanwhile, common folk are relegated to off-peak hours, early morning before the water has properly heated and when the staff is still groggy and inattentive, or evening when the day's accumulation of previous bathers has turned the water into something resembling medieval soup. Some establishments offer workers' rates during these less desirable times, but even these discounted prices represent a significant investment for people whose daily existence revolves around earning enough money for food and shelter. The social hierarchy becomes even more apparent in the payment methods accepted by different establishments. High-end bathhouses dealing with wealthy clientele often operate on sophisticated credit systems, allowing nobles and merchants to maintain running tabs that are settled monthly or seasonally when rents and profits are collected. These customers might never handle actual coins during their bathhouse visits, instead having their servants arrange payment through complex networks of credit and obligation that span multiple businesses and social connections. For everyone else, payment is strictly cash in advance, with no exceptions for hardship, promises of future payment, or sob stories about recent financial difficulties. The doorkeepers have heard every excuse imaginable and have developed immune systems against manipulation that would impress modern debt collectors. Some bathhouses employ strong-arm enforcers whose primary job is to ensure that anyone who can't pay doesn't gain access, and that anyone who tries to sneak in without payment quickly regrets their decision in ways that might require medical attention. But wait, there's even more complexity to this medieval pricing nightmare. Many bathhouses operate seasonal pricing that fluctuates based on demand, weather conditions, local economic factors, and even agricultural cycles. During harsh winters, when people are desperate for warmth and the opportunity to wash away months of accumulated grime, prices soar to levels that make modern surge pricing look reasonable by comparison. The desperation factor allows bathhouse owners to charge whatever the market will bear, knowing that people will pay almost anything for a few hours of warmth and cleanliness. Summer rates might be more moderate, but they come with the trade-off of sharing facilities with increased numbers of travelers, merchants, pilgrims, and other transients who view bathhouse visits as essential parts of their business travel. The influx of strangers during traveling season creates its own dynamics, as locals compete with outsiders for access to limited facilities, and bathhouse owners juggle the competing demands of regular customers and potentially profitable one-time visitors. Religious holidays create their own unique pricing dynamics, as some bathhouses offer special rates to encourage spiritual cleansing before important feast days, while others raise prices to capitalize on the increased demand from people who want to present their best selves for religious observances. The relationship between bathhouse owners and local religious authorities creates a delicate balancing act where pricing strategies must account for moral disapproval while maximizing profit from the very people whose spiritual leaders condemn the entire enterprise. The economics become even more complicated when you consider that many bathhouses offer package deals that bundle bathing with other services. You might pay a higher base rate but receive access to additional amenities like food and drink, entertainment, gambling opportunities, or more intimate services that are never explicitly advertised but are well understood by regular patrons. These package deals create a parallel economy within the bathhouse where different rules apply and different prices prevail. Historians still argue whether medieval bathhouse pricing was primarily driven by genuine operating costs or by the owner's recognition that they could charge premium rates for what amounted to a monopoly on hot water and privacy. The expense of heating large quantities of water using wood or charcoal, maintaining stone buildings that required constant repair due to moisture damage, employing sufficient staff to manage complex operations, and paying various taxes and fees to local authorities was certainly significant. However, the profit margins evident in surviving business records suggest that many bathhouse owners were doing quite well for themselves in an era when most people struggled to accumulate any wealth at all. Some successful bathhouse operators accumulated enough wealth to purchase additional properties, invest in other businesses, or even achieve minor nobility through strategic marriages or land purchases. The economic impact of bathhouse pricing extends far beyond individual transactions to affect entire family budgets and community dynamics. For many medieval families, a bathhouse visit represents a major financial decision that must be planned and saved for over weeks or months. Parents might sacrifice their own cleanliness to ensure their children can occasionally experience proper bathing, or families might pool resources to allow one member to maintain the social connections and business opportunities that come with regular bathhouse attendance. This creates a vicious cycle where those who most need the social and economic benefits of bathhouse participation are least able to afford regular access, while those who can easily pay the fees gain additional advantages that help them maintain and increase their wealth and social status. The bathhouse becomes both a symbol of medieval prosperity and a mechanism for reinforcing existing social hierarchies in ways that would persist for generations. Some enterprising bathhouse owners have developed creative payment schemes that blur the line between legitimate business and questionable practices. Barter systems allow people to trade goods, services, or labor in exchange for bathing privileges, but these arrangements often heavily favor the bathhouse owners who can dictate exchange rates and determine the value of non-monetary payments according to their own interests and immediate needs. Women might exchange domestic services like laundry, cooking, or textile work, spending hours of labor to earn a single bath. Men might provide manual labor for building maintenance, hauling water, chopping wood, or other physically demanding tasks. Skilled craftsmen might trade their expertise metalwork, carpentry, or leather goods for access to hot water and soap, but the exchange rates rarely reflect the true value of their skills. As you stand at the threshold, counting the meager coins in your purse and trying to calculate whether you can afford even the most basic bathhouse experience, you're getting your first taste of medieval economics in action. The simple desire to get clean has transformed into a complex financial negotiation that will determine not just whether you bathe today, but how thoroughly, with what amenities, and in whose company you'll share this supposedly relaxing experience. The heavy wooden door creaks open, and you're immediately hit with a wall of humid air that feels like being wrapped in a damp, slightly fragrant blanket. But before you can even process the sensory overload of your first medieval bathhouse experience, You're confronted with a social situation that would make modern etiquette experts break out in a cold sweat. Welcome to the world of communal nudity, where getting clean is the least of your worries compared to navigating the bewildering maze of social protocols that govern who can look at whom, when, and for how long. The attendant who greets you, a surprisingly well-groomed individual, whose job apparently includes being the human equivalent of a bathhouse instruction manual, begins rattling off a series of rules that sound like they were developed by a committee of paranoid aristocrats and anxious clergy members. You quickly realize that medieval bathhouse etiquette makes modern social media algorithms look straightforward by comparison. This isn't just about taking off your clothes and getting in the water. It's about participating in a complex social ritual that could make or break your reputation in the community. First, there's the undressing protocol, which varies dramatically based on your social status, gender, the time of day, the specific bathhouse, local customs, religious calendar, and apparently the current political climate. If you're male and of middling social rank, you're expected to disrobe in a designated area near the entrance, carefully folding your clothes in a specific manner that demonstrates both respect for the establishment and awareness of your place in the social hierarchy. This isn't casual undressing, it's a performance that every other patron will observe and judge. Your garments must be arranged to show that you're clean enough to deserve being here, but not so ostentatiously that you appear to be putting on airs above your station. The folding technique itself is almost ritualistic. Your outer garments go on top, arranged to display any decorative elements or quality fabric that establishes your social credentials, while your undergarments are discreetly hidden beneath. The way you handle your belt, shoes, and any accessories sends signals about your background, your respect for the establishment, and your understanding of proper behavior. Your shoes must be positioned in a way that shows they're well-maintained but not overly expensive, and any jewelry or personal items must be displayed prominently enough to discourage theft while not appearing to flaunt wealth that might attract unwanted attention from either criminals or tax collectors. Some patrons employ elaborate strategies for securing their valuables, hiding coins in specially designed pouches sewn into clothing or arranging complex systems with attendants who charge additional fees for safeguarding personal property. Women face an entirely different set of protocols that are somehow even more complex and contradictory. Depending on the specific establishment and local customs, women might have separate changing areas, designated hours when men aren't permitted, or elaborate screening systems that allow them to undress without being observed by inappropriate eyes. Some bathhouses employ female attendants whose sole job is to ensure that the undressing process maintains proper modesty while still allowing access to the bathing facilities. The changing areas for women often feature additional complications like special benches positioned to provide maximum privacy, screens made from cloth or wooden panels that can be adjusted based on the number of female patrons present, and complex scheduling systems that coordinate women's access with the bathhouse's other activities. The female attendants who manage these areas wield considerable power within the bathhouse hierarchy, as they control access and can influence how comfortable women feel about participating in the bathing experience. But here's where it gets really interesting. Once you're actually undressed and in the communal bathing area, a whole new set of rules kicks in that would challenge a professional diplomat. Direct eye contact is generally discouraged unless you're of similar social rank and have been properly introduced, but completely avoiding looking at other bathers is also considered rude and suspicious. You're supposed to maintain a delicate balance of polite awareness without appearing to stare, judge, or show inappropriate interest in other people's bodies. The challenge is that appropriate looking varies tremendously based on the specific relationships between people in the bath. Business partners might engage in direct conversation and eye contact while discussing deals, but the same behavior between strangers could be interpreted as aggressive or inappropriately intimate. Family members have their own protocols. Religious figures require special deference, and foreign visitors operate under different expectations that everyone somehow expects you to understand intuitively. The positioning within the bath itself follows its own complex geography of social hierarchy that shifts constantly based on who's present, what relationships exist between different patrons, and various social and political factors that might not be immediately apparent to newcomers. The area closest to where the fresh hot water enters is generally reserved for the highest-ranking patrons, while everyone else arranges themselves in descending order of importance radiating outward toward the cooler, murkier edges. But this isn't just about social status, it's also about timing, personal relationships, business connections, ongoing feuds that might date back generations, family alliances, political affiliations, and even recent community events that might have shifted the relative standing of different individuals. The seating arrangement in a medieval bathhouse is like a living map of community power structures, and understanding it requires intimate knowledge of local politics and social dynamics. Moving within the bath requires its own set of diplomatic skills that would impress modern negotiators. You can't simply wade over to where you want to be. You must navigate a complex system of subtle requests, polite acknowledgments, and social negotiations that would make peace treaty discussions seem simple. Want to move closer to the hot water inlet? You need to either wait for someone of lower status to vacate the area, somehow communicate your request to someone of higher status who might graciously make room, or navigate the complex web of relationships to find someone willing to facilitate your movement. The process of requesting a position change involves understanding who has the authority to grant or deny such requests, what the appropriate language and gestures are for making the request, and how to gracefully accept either approval or rejection without causing offense or losing face. Some bathhouses have developed hand signal systems that allow for discreet communication, while others rely on verbal negotiations that must be conducted with the proper level of formality and deference. The conversation protocols are perhaps the most treacherous aspect of bathhouse etiquette, requiring you to maintain appropriate social interaction while naked, wet, and surrounded by people whose naked bodies create an inherently vulnerable and potentially uncomfortable social environment. Certain topics are absolutely forbidden. You can't discuss anyone's physical appearance, make comments about personal hygiene, or bring up controversial political or religious subjects that might lead to heated arguments in an environment where people are literally hot, naked, and potentially armed with nothing but wooden bathing implements that could still cause significant damage. Safe conversation topics include general business matters, but nothing too specific that might reveal trade secrets, weather conditions and their impact on local agriculture, news from other cities, but nothing too recent that might be considered gossip or politically sensitive, and philosophical discussions about topics so abstract that no one could possibly take offense. The challenge is maintaining these elevated conversational standards when you're sitting naked in increasingly murky water with people you might normally cross the street to avoid. Religious topics require especially careful navigation, as different patrons might hold varying theological views that could lead to passionate disagreements. Political discussions are even more dangerous, as expressing the wrong opinion about local lords, royal policies, or international conflicts could have serious consequences that extend far beyond the bathhouse. Even seemingly innocent topics like family news or business updates must be handled carefully to avoid inadvertently revealing information that could be used against you or others. But the real social minefield involves the subtle negotiations around physical space and bodily contact. In a crowded communal bath, some degree of incidental contact is inevitable, but the protocols around acknowledgement, apology, and appropriate response are incredibly complex and vary based on the relative social standing of the people involved. Accidentally bumping into someone of higher social rank requires immediate and elaborate apology, while being bumped by someone of lower rank requires gracious acceptance that demonstrates your superior breeding and magnanimity. The types of acceptable contact, the duration of such contact, and the appropriate responses all depend on complex social calculations that take into account age, gender, social rank, family relationships, business connections, and even recent community events that might have affected the relative standing of different individuals. Some forms of accidental contact require formal apologies that might involve elaborate verbal formulas, while others can be acknowledged with simple gestures or even ignored entirely. The bathing process itself involves its own etiquette around the use of shared soap, bathing implements, and towels. Everything is communal, but there's a complex system of precedence that determines who gets access to the good soap first, who gets the cleanest bathing cloths, and who has to make do with whatever's left over. Some bathhouses attempt to manage this through a ticket system or designated time slots, but more often it's handled through the same sort of social negotiation that governs everything else in medieval society. The quality and availability of bathing supplies varies dramatically throughout the day, as the best materials are naturally claimed first by the highest status patrons. By the time lower-ranking individuals gain access, the soap might be down to harsh, gritty remnants, the bathing cloths might be stained and worn, and the towels might be damp from previous use. Learning to navigate this system requires understanding not just the formal protocols, but the informal networks of relationships that can provide access to better supplies. Historians still argue whether these elaborate protocols developed organically from practical necessity or were deliberately created by bathhouse owners to maintain order and prevent the kind of social chaos that could damage their business reputation and potentially lead to violence in an environment where people are vulnerable and tensions can escalate quickly. What's certain is that violations of bathhouse etiquette could have consequences extending far beyond the immediate embarrassment of social disapproval. The enforcement of these rules varies dramatically depending on the establishment, the specific social dynamics of the patrons present on any given day, the season, local political conditions, and recent events that might have affected community relationships. Some bathhouses employ dedicated etiquette monitors, usually older patrons of impeccable social standing whose job is to observe behavior and subtly correct violations before they escalate into more serious problems that could disrupt the entire establishment. These individuals wield enormous social power within the bathhouse environment, and earning their disapproval can effectively bar you from future visits not just at this establishment, but potentially at other bathhouses throughout the region. Their word carries weight in the broader community, and their assessment of your behavior can affect your reputation in ways that impact business relationships, marriage prospects, and social opportunities for years to come. More serious violations might result in immediate expulsion from the bathhouse, forfeiture of any fees paid, potential banning from other establishments in the area, and even formal complaints to local authorities if the behavior is considered sufficiently disruptive or inappropriate. The bathhouse community is surprisingly interconnected, and word of inappropriate behavior travels quickly between owners, staff, and regular patrons through networks that span multiple cities and regions. As you stand there, naked and vulnerable, processing all of these social requirements while simultaneously dealing with the physical challenges of maintaining your balance on slippery stone surfaces and adapting to water temperatures that range from tepid to scalding, you're beginning to understand why medieval bathhouse visits were considered such significant social events requiring careful preparation and social intelligence. As you finally lower yourself into the communal bathwater, congratulations, you've just entered what might generously be called nature's most terrifying roulette wheel. The warm liquid that envelopes your body looks inviting enough in the dim, steam-filled atmosphere, but you're actually soaking in a medieval cocktail of diseases, bodily fluids, and questionable additives that would make a modern microbiologist flee screaming into the night. Welcome to the wonderful world of medieval water quality, where every soak is a gamble with your life, and the house always wins. The water itself tells a story that would horrify any modern health inspector who had the misfortune to analyze its contents. What you're experiencing as a relaxing warm bath is actually a complex ecosystem that's been developing throughout the day as dozens of previous bathers have contributed their own unique biological signatures to the mix. That slightly cloudy appearance isn't just steam condensation, it's the accumulated essence of everyone who's been in this water before you, along with whatever they brought with them from the medieval streets, their homes, their workplaces, and their bodies. Medieval cities weren't exactly known for their advanced sewage systems, and the water sources that supply bathhouses often come from wells, springs, or rivers that have been systematically contaminated by human waste, animal droppings, industrial runoff from tanneries and smithies, rotting organic matter, and the general detritus of urban life that accumulates in any medieval settlement. Even when bathhouses draw from supposedly clean sources like mountain springs or deep wells, the transportation and storage methods ensure that the water picks up additional contaminants along every step of its journey from source to your skin. The heating process, which might seem like it would kill harmful organisms through the application of high temperatures, actually operates at levels that are perfect for cultivating certain types of bacteria, while failing to eliminate many others that thrive in warm, moist environments. Medieval heating methods don't achieve the sustained high temperatures necessary for proper sterilization, instead creating a warm, nutrient-rich environment that's essentially a medieval petri dish specifically designed to culture whatever microscopic life forms happen to be present in the water supply. But here's where it gets really interesting from a historical perspective. Medieval bathhouse water isn't just contaminated by accident or neglect, it's deliberately treated with substances that would make your modern stomach turn and your immune system declare a state of emergency. Many establishments add various medicinal herbs, oils, and chemicals that are supposed to provide therapeutic benefits but actually create additional health hazards that compound the existing contamination problems. Popular additives include sulfur compounds for treating skin conditions, which smell like rotten eggs, and can cause chemical burns on sensitive skin. Various plant extracts for their supposed healing properties that often contain toxic alkaloids, and even animal-derived substances that medieval medicine considers beneficial but modern science recognizes as potentially dangerous. These might include rendered animal fats, ground bone meal, dried blood from various animals, and extracts from organs that medieval physicians believe contain healing essences. Some bathhouses pride themselves on using water that's been infused with crushed gemstones, metal filings, or exotic imported minerals that wealthy patrons believe will transfer magical or medicinal properties to their bodies through direct skin contact. The reality is that many of these additives are either completely useless from a medical standpoint or actively harmful, adding toxic elements like lead, mercury, or arsenic to water that's already questionable at best. The recycling system employed by most medieval bathhouses would not only horrify modern environmental health experts, it would probably violate every water safety regulation ever written. Water isn't changed between bathers or even between different groups of bathers. Instead, it's topped off with fresh heated water as needed throughout the day, creating a gradual dilution process that might reduce concentrations of contaminants while never actually eliminating them completely. Some establishments claim to filter their water through sand, charcoal, or cloth screens, but these primitive filtration methods are largely ineffective against the types of biological and chemical contamination present in medieval water sources. The filters themselves often become breeding grounds for bacteria and other microorganisms, actually adding new contaminants to the water they're supposed to be cleaning. The most disturbing aspect of medieval bathwater is the sheer variety and volume of human contributions that accumulate throughout a typical day of operation. You're not just sharing water with other bathers, you're sharing their skin cells, hair, natural oils, sweat, saliva, nasal secretions, and various other bodily fluids that medieval people produce in abundance due to their generally poor hygiene and health conditions. Medieval bodies carry higher levels of bacteria, parasites, and infectious agents than modern bodies, and all of these biological materials get transferred directly into the shared water supply where they can multiply and spread. But wait, there's even more biological excitement in store for your medieval bathing adventure. Medieval bathhouses often serve as unofficial medical treatment centers, meaning that people with various diseases, infections, and skin conditions come specifically to soak in the supposedly healing waters. That friendly person sharing your section of the bath might be treating an open wound that's been festering for weeks, a skin infection that's spreading across their body, a sexually transmitted disease that medieval medicine doesn't understand, or any number of other medical conditions that contemporary physicians believe can be cured through prolonged exposure to communal bathing. The water temperature creates additional health hazards that medieval bathers aren't even aware of, despite their daily exposure to the consequences. The warm, humid environment is perfect for cultivating fungal infections that can spread rapidly between bathers, promoting the growth of harmful bacteria that thrive in body temperature water, and creating conditions that allow various parasites to complete their life cycles and find new hosts among the bathing population. Modern research has shown that the temperature ranges common in medieval bathhouses, typically between 95 and 105 degrees Fahrenheit, are ideal for organisms that cause everything from minor skin irritations and rashes to serious systemic infections that can affect internal organs. The sustained exposure to these temperatures, while submerged in contaminated water, creates perfect conditions for pathogens to penetrate the skin through pores, minor cuts, and natural membrane permeability. Historians still argue whether medieval people were fully aware of the health risks associated with communal bathing, or whether they simply accepted disease transmission as an inevitable part of life that couldn't be avoided regardless of their behavior. What's certain is that bathhouse-related illnesses were common enough that many medieval medical texts include specific treatments for conditions acquired through bathing, suggesting that even contemporary physicians recognized the connection between bathhouses and disease transmission. The chemical composition of medieval bathwater creates additional hazards that go beyond simple biological contamination. The soap used in these establishments is made from harsh alkaline substances derived from wood ash and animal fats, creating a highly caustic solution that can cause chemical burns on sensitive skin, strip away protective natural oils, and create open wounds that are immediately exposed to the contaminated water environment. When this primitive soap mixes with the mineral content of the water and the various additives used by different bathhouses, it creates unpredictable chemical reactions that can produce irritating or toxic compounds that weren't present in any of the original ingredients. These chemical cocktails can cause everything from mild skin irritation to serious chemical burns that require medical treatment, assuming such treatment is available and effective. Many bathhouses add salt to their water, believing it provides antiseptic properties that will kill harmful organisms and prevent disease transmission. However, medieval salt often contains high levels of impurities, including heavy metals like lead and mercury, toxic compounds from the evaporation process, and organic contaminants from the storage and transportation methods used to bring salt to inland locations. The combination of contaminated salt, harsh soap, mineral deposits from the water source, and various medicinal additives creates a chemical soup that's as dangerous as it is unpleasant. The pH levels fluctuate wildly throughout the day as different substances are added, and as the water chemistry changes through exposure to air, heat, and the various substances contributed by bathers. The water quality varies dramatically throughout the day, starting relatively clean in the early morning and gradually deteriorating as more bathers contribute their biological signatures to the mix. By evening, the water has typically reached a consistency and appearance that would make modern swimming pool operators shut down immediately and call hazmat teams to investigate potential chemical or biological contamination. The color shifts from clear or slightly cloudy in the morning to progressively murkier shades of brown, yellow, or green as the day progresses. The texture becomes noticeably thicker and more viscous as organic matter accumulates and begins to break down in the warm water. The smell develops complex notes that suggest biological processes are occurring in real time, creating aromatic signatures that experienced bathhouse patrons learn to interpret as indicators of water quality and safety. Some bathhouses attempt to maintain water quality through primitive treatment methods that often make the situation worse rather than better. They might add strong-smelling herbs like mint, rosemary, or lavender to mask unpleasant odors without addressing the underlying contamination issues. They use crude chemicals like lime or vinegar that create additional toxic hazards while providing minimal actual cleaning benefits. They employ filtration systems that remove some visible contaminants while concentrating others to dangerous levels that aren't immediately apparent to bathers. The most expensive bathhouses claim to change their water more frequently than their cheaper competitors. But even these establishments typically operate on schedules that allow significant contamination to accumulate between water changes. The cost and labor involved in heating large quantities of water means that even wealthy establishments are motivated to extend the useful life of each batch of bathwater as long as possible without driving away customers who might complain about obviously unsanitary conditions. Regional variations in water sources create different types of health hazards depending on where you're bathing and what natural or artificial contaminants are present in the local environment. Coastal bathhouses might use seawater that's been contaminated by human waste from ships, dead marine life, and industrial runoff from port activities. Mountain establishments might draw from springs that contain high levels of naturally occurring minerals that can cause kidney stones, digestive problems, or other health issues with prolonged exposure. Urban bathhouses typically use water sources that have been contaminated by the concentrated waste products of medieval city life, including human sewage, animal waste from stables and markets, runoff from various industries, and the accumulated detritus of thousands of people living in close proximity without modern sanitation systems. As you sit in this medieval biological experiment, feeling the warm water lap against your skin and trying not to think about what exactly is causing that slight burning sensation around your more sensitive areas, you're participating in one of history's most dangerous forms of recreation. Every minute you spend in this water increases your exposure to a vast array of potential health hazards that medieval medicine is completely unprepared to treat effectively. The other bathers around you seem perfectly comfortable with the situation, chatting casually about business and weather while soaking in what amounts to a medieval disease incubator. Their apparent comfort might be reassuring, but remember that crocodile dung sunscreen we mentioned earlier. Sometimes people can get used to almost anything, regardless of how dangerous it actually is to their health and well-being. Just when you think you've figured out the basic survival strategy for medieval bathhouse water, you notice movement in your peripheral vision that makes your stomach drop. The bathhouse staff is approaching, and their array of tools, implements, and mysterious substances suggests that your relaxing soak is about to become a full-service medieval spa experience that would make modern torture devices seem quaint by comparison. Welcome to the world of bathhouse attendants, whose ideas about customer service were apparently developed by people who thought pain was therapeutic and privacy was overrated. The head attendant, a wiry individual whose arms are muscled from years of scrubbing reluctant patrons, approaches with a smile that's equal parts professional courtesy and predatory anticipation. He's carrying what appears to be a medieval grooming kit that looks like it was assembled by someone who confused beauty treatment with field surgery. The implements clatter ominously as he sets them down beside your section of the bath, and you can't help but notice that several of them appear to have suspicious stains that could be either rust or dried blood, and honestly, either option is concerning. The scrubbing brushes alone represent a spectrum of medieval pain that ranges from mildly uncomfortable to potentially life-threatening. The coarsest brushes are made from actual animal hair, not the soft, refined bristles you might imagine, but stiff, wiry hair from pigs, horses, and other livestock that's been bundled together and attached to wooden handles worn smooth by countless gripping hands. These brushes are designed to remove not just dirt and grime, but apparently the top several layers of your skin as well. For customers willing to pay premium prices, the attendants offer brushes made from exotic materials like imported boar bristles, whalebone scrapers, or even metal implements that medieval people believe provide superior cleaning power. The reality is that these luxury tools are often more dangerous than their cheaper counterparts, capable of causing serious skin damage while creating open wounds that are immediately exposed to the contaminated bathwater you've been soaking in. The soap application process involves its own set of medieval horrors that would make modern dermatologists weep openly. The attendants don't simply hand you a bar of soap and let you handle the process yourself. They take personal responsibility for ensuring that every inch of your body receives thorough treatment with cleaning agents that are essentially medieval chemical warfare disguised as hygiene products. The premium soap, available for additional fees that significantly increase your total bathhouse costs, is made from olive oil imported from Mediterranean regions where they supposedly understand the finer points of soap crafting. However, even this expensive soap contains harsh alkaline compounds derived from wood ash, creating a cleaning agent that's simultaneously more effective and more dangerous than anything you've experienced in your modern life. The budget soap, which most patrons receive as part of their basic service package, is manufactured from whatever animal fats are available locally, combined with ash from various wood sources and whatever additives the soap makers believe will improve the cleaning power or scent. This might include ground bones, herbs that haven't been properly processed to remove toxic compounds, or even mineral additives that can cause chemical burns on sensitive skin. The attendants apply this soap with an enthusiasm that suggests they're paid based on the amount of skin they can remove rather than customer satisfaction. They work the soap into a lather using techniques that involve vigorous scrubbing, aggressive massaging, and what can only be described as medieval exfoliation that removes not just dirt and dead skin, but apparently living skin as well. But the real adventure begins when the attendants start offering specialized services that go far beyond basic bathing assistance. Medieval bathhouses operate as comprehensive personal care centers, where you can receive everything from hair trimming to minor surgical procedures, often performed by the same individuals using the same tools in the same contaminated environment where you've been soaking. The hair washing service involves applications of substances that medieval people believe will clean, strengthen, and beautify hair, but which often contain ingredients that would horrify modern toxicologists. Popular hair treatments include mixtures of animal urine, particularly from young animals, which is supposed to be more potent, fermented plant extracts that smell like they've been rotting for months, and various oils derived from animals or plants that may or may not be safe for human contact. The hair cutting and styling services are performed using metal implements that have been sharpened to various degrees of effectiveness and maintained according to medieval standards of tool care. The scissors might be sharp enough to cut hair, or they might require sawing motions that pull and tear rather than cleanly severing individual strands. The razors used for shaving and trimming are often shared between multiple customers with minimal cleaning between uses, creating opportunities for disease transmission that go beyond simple water contamination. Historians still argue whether medieval bathhouse attendants received formal training in their various specialties, or whether they learned through apprenticeship systems that emphasized practical experience over theoretical knowledge. What's certain is that the range of services they offered often extended far beyond their actual competence, creating situations where customers received treatments that were ineffective at best and actively harmful at worst. The massage services provided by bathhouse attendants represent another category of medieval customer care that combines genuine therapeutic benefits with significant health risks. The attendants use various oils, lotions, and ointments that are supposed to provide medicinal benefits, but which often contain substances that can cause allergic reactions, skin irritation, or worse complications when applied to skin that's already been compromised by exposure to contaminated water and harsh cleaning agents. The massage techniques themselves range from gentle applications that might actually provide some relief from muscle tension, to aggressive manipulations that can cause bruising, joint damage, or other injuries. The attendants learn these techniques through informal training that emphasizes tradition and personal experience rather than anatomical knowledge or understanding of potential risks. Some bathhouses employ specialized attendants who focus on specific services like nail care, dental hygiene, or treatment of various skin conditions. These specialists often develop their own unique approaches to customer care that might be based on personal experience, local traditions, family recipes for treatment compounds, or simply trial and error with previous customers. The nail care services involve trimming, cleaning, and treating fingernails and toenails using metal implements that may or may not be properly maintained or sanitized between customers. The process often includes removal of dirt and debris that has accumulated under nails, treatment of ingrown nails or other nail problems, and application of various substances that are supposed to strengthen or beautify the nails. The dental hygiene services provided by some bathhouse attendants represent medieval dentistry at its most optimistic and dangerous. These might include tooth cleaning using abrasive substances that remove plaque but also damage tooth enamel, treatment of toothaches using techniques that range from herbal applications to actual tooth extraction, and various procedures designed to improve breath or dental appearance. The attendants who provide these dental services often have no formal training in anatomy or medical procedures, instead relying on traditional techniques that have been passed down through generations of practitioners. The tools they use are often crude metal implements that serve multiple purposes and may not be designed specifically for dental work. The most controversial services offered by bathhouse attendants involve treatments for various medical conditions that customers believe can be cured or improved through bathing and related therapies. These might include applications of leeches for bloodletting, treatment of skin conditions using various topical preparations, or even minor surgical procedures performed in the bathhouse environment. The bloodletting services deserve special mention as an example of medieval medical practice that combines good intentions with potentially lethal execution. The attendants use leeches, cupping devices, or sharp instruments to remove blood from customers who believe this will balance their bodily humors and improve their health. The procedures are often performed in the same contaminated water environment where customers have been bathing, creating obvious risks for infection and disease transmission. The quality of these medical services varies dramatically depending on the experience and skill of individual attendants, the quality of tools and materials available, and the specific techniques employed. Some attendants have developed genuine expertise in certain areas through years of practice, while others offer services that are essentially experimental procedures performed on paying customers. The payment structure for these additional services creates its own complications, as different attendants may charge different rates for similar services, and the total cost of a bathhouse visit can escalate quickly as customers add various treatments to their basic bathing experience. Some attendants work for tips and gratuities, while others receive fixed payments from the bathhouse owners, creating different incentive structures that affect the quality and safety of services provided. The training and supervision of bathhouse attendants varies significantly between different establishments and regions. Some bathhouses maintain strict standards for their staff and provide ongoing training in customer service and safety procedures. Others hire attendants based primarily on their willingness to work in difficult conditions for relatively low wages, with minimal attention to their qualifications or competence. As you submit to the ministrations of these medieval service providers, trying to maintain your composure while sharp implements scrape across your skin and mysterious substances are applied to various parts of your body, you're experiencing customer service from an era when the customer was definitely not always right, and survival was often a more realistic goal than satisfaction. The attendants work with practiced efficiency, moving between different customers and different types of services with casual confidence that suggests they've performed these procedures countless times before. Their apparent competence might be reassuring, but remember that medieval medicine was based on theories that modern science has thoroughly debunked, and experience doesn't necessarily translate to safety when the underlying principles are fundamentally flawed. As if the enthusiastic attentions of the bathhouse staff weren't enough to make you question your life choices, you're about to discover that medieval cleansing products represent a fascinating intersection of alchemy, wishful thinking, and what can only be described as chemical warfare disguised as personal hygiene. The soap, oils, and various treatments available in your medieval bathhouse have been formulated by people whose understanding of chemistry was roughly equivalent to a modern toddler's grasp of nuclear physics, but with significantly more confidence and considerably less safety oversight. The basic soap that the attendant is now enthusiastically applying to your increasingly tender skin represents centuries of trial and error in medieval chemistry, with heavy emphasis on the error part. This isn't the gentle, moisturizing soap you're accustomed to in your modern life. This is essentially liquid sandpaper mixed with whatever chemicals medieval soap makers could find, afford, or successfully produce without accidentally poisoning themselves in the process. The manufacturing process for medieval soap begins with wood ash, specifically hardwood ash that's been carefully collected, sifted, and processed to extract the potassium hydroxide that provides the soap's cleaning power. This sounds relatively harmless until you realize that medieval ash processing techniques often fail to remove various toxic compounds that accumulated in the wood during the tree's lifetime, including heavy metals from contaminated soil and various organic toxins from environmental pollution that medieval people didn't understand or recognize. The ash is then combined with animal fats that have been rendered from whatever livestock happens to be available, using cooking processes that often fail to remove harmful bacteria, parasites, or other biological contaminants present in the original animal tissue. The fat might come from pigs that died of disease, cattle that were already sick when slaughtered, or even more exotic animals whose fat was acquired through questionable means and unknown storage conditions. The combination of caustic ash water and contaminated animal fat creates a chemical reaction that produces soap, along with various byproducts that range from merely unpleasant to actively dangerous. The process isn't precisely controlled, so the final product might be too weak to clean effectively, or so strong that it causes chemical burns on contact with human skin. Most medieval soap falls somewhere in between, providing cleaning power while simultaneously damaging the skin it's supposed to be protecting. But that's just the basic soap formulation. Many bathhouses pride themselves on offering premium soap products that contain additional ingredients designed to provide enhanced cleaning power, pleasant scents, or supposed medicinal benefits. These additives transform simple soap into complex chemical cocktails that would require hazmat certification to handle safely in the modern world. Popular soap additives include various herbs and plant extracts that medieval people believe provide healing properties. Unfortunately, many plants that smell pleasant or have traditional medicinal uses also contain toxic compounds that can cause allergic reactions, skin irritation, or worse complications when absorbed through the skin. The soap makers often have limited knowledge about proper dosage, preparation techniques, or potential interactions between different plant materials. Some premium soaps contain ground minerals or metal compounds that are supposed to provide additional cleansing power or transfer beneficial properties to the user's skin. These might include crushed pearls for wealthy customers who believe they'll absorb the gem's supposed purity, powdered metals like copper or iron that medieval medicine considers beneficial, or exotic mineral compounds imported from distant regions where their true composition and safety are unknown. The scenting agents used in medieval soap represent their own category of chemical hazard. Many pleasant-smelling soaps contain concentrated plant oils that are highly allergenic or toxic when applied directly to the skin in the concentrations used by medieval soap makers. The extraction processes used to obtain these scenting agents often fail to remove harmful compounds while concentrating the very substances that cause adverse reactions. Animal-derived scenting agents create additional health risks, as they might contain hormones, bacteria, or other biological compounds that can cause unpredictable reactions when absorbed through the skin. Musk from various animals, oils extracted from animal glands, or even processed animal waste products are sometimes used to create distinctive scents that wealthy customers believe indicate superior soap quality. The oils and lotions available for additional fees represent medieval cosmetic science at its most optimistic and dangerous. These products are designed to moisturize skin that's been damaged by harsh soap, provide supposed medicinal benefits, or simply make customers feel pampered and luxurious during their bathhouse experience. The reality is that many of these oil treatments cause more problems than they solve, creating chemical burns, allergic reactions, or other complications that medieval medicine is completely unprepared to treat effectively. The base oils used in these treatments might be derived from plants, animals, or even mineral sources, each carrying its own set of potential health risks. Plant oils can contain toxic compounds that weren't removed during processing. Animal oils might harbor diseases or parasites from the source animals, and mineral oils often contain heavy metals or other toxic substances that accumulate in the body over time. Many oil treatments contain multiple ingredients that interact in unpredictable ways, creating chemical reactions that produce new compounds that weren't present in any of the original ingredients. Medieval formulators have no way to predict or control these interactions, instead relying on trial and error with paying customers to determine whether their oil blends are safe or effective. The hair treatments available in medieval bathhouses represent some of the most creative and dangerous applications of medieval chemistry to personal grooming. These products are designed to clean, strengthen, beautify, or treat various hair and scalp conditions using ingredients that range from merely unpleasant to genuinely toxic. Popular hair treatment ingredients include fermented urine from various animals, particularly young animals whose urine is believed to be more potent and beneficial. The fermentation process is supposed to concentrate the beneficial properties while reducing the unpleasant smell, but often achieves exactly the opposite result. The fermented urine is applied directly to the hair and scalp, where it can cause chemical burns, allergic reactions, or introduce bacterial infections through any small cuts or abrasions. Other hair treatments might contain oils extracted from animal organs, plant materials that have been processed using techniques that fail to remove toxic compounds, or even mineral substances that can accumulate in the hair shaft and cause long-term damage to hair structure and scalp health. The application process often involves vigorous massaging that can damage hair follicles or create small wounds that are immediately exposed to the various chemicals being applied. Historians still argue whether medieval people were aware of the potential dangers associated with these cosmetic treatments or whether they simply accepted adverse reactions as normal consequences of beauty and hygiene maintenance. What's certain is that many medieval medical texts include treatments for conditions that modern dermatologists would immediately recognize as chemical burns, allergic reactions, or toxic exposures related to cosmetic product use. The specialized treatments offered for various skin conditions represent medieval dermatology at its most experimental and potentially harmful. These treatments are designed to address everything from simple acne to serious skin diseases, using approaches that combine genuine medical knowledge with speculation, superstition, and ingredients that often make the original problems worse. Popular skin treatments include applications of various acids derived from fermented organic materials, mineral compounds that are supposed to draw toxins from the skin, or plant extracts that medieval medicine believes provide healing properties. Many of these treatments involve applying caustic substances directly to damaged or infected skin, creating chemical burns that are then treated with additional substances that may cause further complications. The diagnosis and treatment selection process relies heavily on visual examination and traditional knowledge rather than any systematic understanding of skin physiology or disease processes. The attendants who provide these treatments often have extensive practical experience but limited theoretical knowledge, leading to treatment approaches that might be effective for some conditions while being actively harmful for others. The most dangerous treatments involve the use of heavy metals like mercury, lead, or arsenic, which medieval medicine considers powerful healing agents but which modern science recognizes as potent toxins that can cause serious systemic health problems. These substances are often applied topically in concentrations that can cause immediate chemical burns while also being absorbed through the skin to cause long-term organ damage. As you submit to the application of these various medieval cosmetic treatments, feeling the burn of caustic soap, the sting of mysterious oils, and the uncomfortable heat of whatever herbal concoction is currently being massaged into your scalp, you're experiencing personal care from an era when the line between medicine and torture was often unclear. The attendants work with practiced confidence, applying various substances and treatments with the casual efficiency of people who perform these procedures daily. Their experience might seem reassuring, but remember that experience doesn't necessarily translate to safety when the underlying knowledge base is fundamentally flawed and the available treatments are often more dangerous than the conditions they're supposed to address. Your skin is now tingling in ways that suggest chemical reactions are occurring in real time, and you can't help but wonder whether the burning sensation indicates that the treatments are working or that you're experiencing the early stages of chemical poisoning. In the medieval world, these two possibilities often amount to the same thing. Just as you're beginning to think that harsh soap and mysterious oils represent the peak of medieval bathhouse dangers, you notice something that makes your blood run colder, makes someone else's blood run literally cold as it drains from their body into a wooden bowl. Welcome to the medical wing of your medieval bathhouse experience, where the same facility that's supposed to clean your body also serves as a combination hospital, surgical suite, and experimental medical laboratory, all operating in the same contaminated water environment you've been soaking in. The sight that greets you is something that would make modern medical professionals require immediate therapy and possibly a career change. In a stone alcove just meters from where you've been bathing, a bathhouse attendant who apparently moonlights as a surgeon is performing what can only be described as medieval medical procedures using techniques that seem designed more for livestock than human patients. The patient, a middle-aged merchant who clearly made some questionable life choices, is having leeches applied to various parts of his body while simultaneously soaking in the same communal water that you've been sharing for the past hour. The medical services offered in medieval bathhouses represent a fascinating convergence of convenience, desperation, and what medieval people optimistically call healing arts. The logic, such as it exists, suggests that since bathing is supposed to be healthy, and since sick people need healing, combining the two activities should provide enhanced therapeutic benefits through some sort of medieval medical synergy. The reality is that you're witnessing healthcare delivery that combines the sterility standards of a medieval stable with the surgical precision of enthusiastic amateurs who learned their trade through trial and error on paying customers. The bloodletting services represent medieval medicine's favorite solution to virtually every health problem imaginable, from headaches and fever to plague symptoms and mental illness. The theory, inherited from ancient Greek medicine and systematically twisted through centuries of misinterpretation and wishful thinking, holds that most diseases result from imbalances in the body's four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. The obvious solution, according to medieval medical wisdom, is to remove excess blood until the patient achieves perfect humoral balance, which coincidentally often occurs right around the time they lose consciousness from blood loss. The bathhouse bloodletting specialist approaches his craft with tools that look like they were designed by someone who confused medical instruments with medieval torture devices and decided to combine the worst features of both categories. His collection includes various types of lancets for making precisely controlled incisions, cupping devices that use heat and suction to draw blood through the skin without requiring actual cutting, and an impressive array of leeches that he maintains in special containers and apparently considers his prized possessions and professional partners. The leeches themselves represent medieval biotechnology at its most optimistic and revolting. These aren't just any leeches randomly collected from local Ponsterie, specially cultivated medical leeches that the practitioner has carefully selected, fed, and maintained according to traditional techniques that supposedly enhance their therapeutic properties and ensure their effectiveness as medical devices. The leeches are applied to specific parts of the body based on medieval medical theory about where different humors accumulate and need to be extracted through controlled blood removal. The application process involves placing live leeches directly on the patient's skin, where they attach themselves with their specialized mouthparts and begin feeding on blood while releasing various compounds that prevent clotting and supposedly provide additional medical benefits beyond simple blood removal. The patient sits in the contaminated bathwater while the leeches work, creating a delightful combination of blood loss, water contamination, and potential disease transmission that represents medieval medicine at its most innovative and dangerous. But bloodletting is just the beginning of the medical adventures available in your medieval bathhouse, where entrepreneurial healthcare providers have expanded their services to include virtually every medical procedure that doesn't require specialized facilities or extensive training. The same attendants who were scrubbing your back with caustic soap are also qualified, in the loosest possible sense of that term, to perform minor surgical procedures that range from simple wound treatment to more complex operations that would require specialized medical facilities, sterile environments, and trained professionals in the modern world. The surgical implements available for these procedures include various knives and cutting tools that serve multiple purposes around the bathhouse during their off-duty hours, metal instruments that have been sharpened to various degrees of effectiveness using whatever grinding stones happen to be available, and cauterizing devices that use heated metal to seal wounds and hopefully prevent excessive bleeding while simultaneously destroying surrounding tissue. The sterilization procedures for these instruments involve, at best, rinsing them in the same water that everyone has been bathing in, and at worst, simply wiping them clean with whatever cloth happens to be available. The range of surgical procedures offered includes tooth extraction, which medieval people consider a routine bathhouse service despite the obvious risks of infection, nerve damage, and potential death from complications. The extraction process involves gripping the problematic tooth with metal pliers or specialized extraction tools and applying sufficient force to remove it from the patient's jaw, often taking pieces of surrounding bone, gum tissue, and adjacent teeth along with the intended target. The patient receives pain management in the form of alcohol consumption, herbal preparations that may or may not have genuine analgesic properties, or simply encouragement to endure the procedure with appropriate medieval stoicism. Wound treatment represents another category of bathhouse medical service that combines good intentions with potentially lethal execution and demonstrates medieval medicine's impressive ability to make simple problems significantly worse. Patients with various injuries, infections, or skin conditions come to the bathhouse seeking treatment that involves cleaning wounds with contaminated water, applying various herbal preparations that may contain toxic compounds, and bandaging injuries with cloth that may not be particularly clean and definitely hasn't been sterilized according to any recognizable standards. The diagnostic procedures used to determine appropriate treatments rely heavily on visual examination, patient descriptions of symptoms that may be inaccurate or incomplete, and traditional medical knowledge that bears little resemblance to modern understanding of disease processes, human anatomy, or effective treatment approaches. The bathhouse medical practitioners often have extensive practical experience but limited theoretical knowledge, leading to treatment approaches that might be effective for some conditions through pure luck while being actively harmful for others. Historians still argue whether medieval bathhouse medical services were primarily driven by genuine attempts to provide health care to underserved populations who couldn't afford traditional physicians, or by the profit potential of offering medical treatments in convenient locations where people were already spending money on personal care services and might be persuaded to purchase additional health-related amenities. What's certain is that the combination of medical care and bathing created unique opportunities for both healing and harm that don't exist in modern healthcare systems. The pain management techniques available during these procedures represent medieval pharmacology at its most creative and unpredictable, combining genuine medical knowledge with speculation, tradition, and whatever psychoactive substances happen to be available locally. Patients might receive alcohol in quantities sufficient to induce unconsciousness or at least significant impairment of pain perception. Herbal preparations that contain genuinely effective analgesic compounds mixed with potentially toxic additives, or various opium-based treatments that provide significant pain relief while creating obvious risks of overdose, respiratory depression, and long-term addiction. The herbal pain medications often contain multiple plant extracts that interact in unpredictable ways, creating effects that can range from mild sedation to complete respiratory depression depending on the patient's size, health status, and individual sensitivity to the various compounds involved. The dosing is based on traditional recipes and personal experience, rather than any systematic understanding of pharmacology or individual patient needs, leading to treatments that might be completely ineffective for some patients while being dangerously potent for others. The post-procedure care involves continued bathing in the same contaminated water where the medical treatments were performed, creating obvious risks for infection and disease transmission that medieval medical practitioners either don't understand or choose to ignore in favor of the supposed therapeutic benefits of warm water immersion. Patients are encouraged to soak their treated wounds in water that contains blood from various sources, bodily fluids from multiple people, and whatever bacteria and other microorganisms have accumulated throughout the day's bathing activities. The most ambitious medical procedures performed in bathhouse settings include treatments for various chronic conditions that medieval medicine believes can be cured through combinations of bathing, bloodletting, and topical applications of various substances that range from harmless herbs to dangerous chemicals. These might include attempts to treat mental illness through physical interventions that have no logical connection to neurological or psychological problems, skin conditions through applications of caustic substances that often make the original problems worse, or internal diseases through external treatments that demonstrate medieval medicine's impressive ability to miss the point entirely. The success rates for these medical treatments are difficult to determine from historical records, partly because medieval medical practitioners didn't maintain systematic records of patient outcomes, and partly because many patients probably didn't survive long enough to evaluate the long-term effectiveness of their treatments. What's clear from surviving documents is that some patients did recover from their conditions, though whether this was due to the treatments they received, despite the treatments they received, or simply through natural healing processes remains an open question. The integration of medical services with bathhouse operations creates unique challenges for maintaining any semblance of hygiene or safety standards that would be recognizable to modern healthcare providers. The same water that's used for recreational bathing is often used for cleaning medical instruments, rinsing wounds, and disposing of various medical waste products that include blood, tissue samples, and whatever other biological materials result from the day's medical procedures. The steam and humidity that create the relaxing bathhouse atmosphere also provide ideal conditions for bacterial growth and disease transmission, turning the entire facility into a giant incubator for whatever pathogens happen to be present in the water. On the instruments, or in the various patients who come seeking medical treatment. The warm, moist environment encourages the growth of fungi, bacteria, and other microorganisms that can cause serious infections in people whose immune systems are already compromised by illness or medical procedures. As you watch the medical procedures taking place just meters from where you've been soaking, you're witnessing healthcare delivery from an era when the distinction between medicine and experimental torture was often unclear and sometimes non-existent. The patients seem surprisingly calm about the entire process, suggesting that they've either achieved a level of stoic acceptance that modern people would find impossible to maintain, or that the pain management techniques are more effective than they appear from your perspective as a horrified observer. The combination of medical care and recreational bathing creates an atmosphere that's simultaneously relaxing and terrifying, where people come to unwind and clean themselves while also potentially receiving life-threatening medical treatments from practitioners whose qualifications consist primarily of enthusiasm, traditional knowledge that may or may not be based on accurate understanding of human anatomy and physiology, and whatever experience they've gained through previous experiments on paying customers. Your medieval bathhouse experience has evolved from a simple desire to get clean into a comprehensive healthcare adventure that includes exposure to experimental medical procedures, questionable pharmaceutical preparations, and surgical techniques that would make modern emergency room physicians reach for their malpractice insurance policies and consider alternative career options in less liability-intensive fields. As the afternoon wears on and you've somehow survived the medical procedures, caustic soap treatments, and contaminated water exposure, you begin to notice subtle changes in the atmosphere around you that suggest your bathhouse adventure is about to take yet another turn for the worse. The social dynamics are shifting. Conversations are becoming more hushed and conspiratorial, and there's an undercurrent of tension that has nothing to do with the temperature of the water. Welcome to the darker side of medieval bathhouse culture, where your innocent desire to get clean has landed you in the middle of a social institution that serves as headquarters for activities that would make modern law enforcement agencies very interested in conducting extensive investigations. The bathhouse, you're beginning to realize, isn't just a place where people come to wash themselves and receive questionable medical treatments. It's a social hub where medieval society's most controversial activities unfold under the convenient cover of steam, privacy, and the general assumption that what happens in hot water stays in hot water. You're about to witness firsthand why religious authorities, moral crusaders, and civic leaders spend so much time denouncing bathhouses as dens of iniquity that threaten the very fabric of Christian society. The first sign that things are getting complicated comes when you notice certain patrons engaging in conversations that definitely aren't about the weather or local business conditions. In the corner of the bath, a well-dressed merchant is conducting what appears to be a business negotiation with a rough-looking individual whose occupation probably doesn't involve legitimate trade activities. They're speaking in low voices and using hand gestures that suggest they're discussing something that requires discretion, secrecy, and possibly the services of people who aren't afraid of violating various laws and moral standards. The bathhouse's reputation as a neutral zone where normal social rules are temporarily suspended makes it an ideal location for negotiations that can't take place in more public or respectable venues. Criminal organizations use bathhouses to conduct business meetings where the combination of nudity, steam, and ambient noise makes it difficult for unwanted listeners to gather useful information about illegal activities being planned or coordinated. The privacy afforded by bathhouse settings also makes them popular venues for political conspiracies, where dissatisfied nobles, ambitious merchants, and other potential troublemakers can meet to discuss plans that might be considered treasonous if overheard by the wrong people. The social mixing that occurs in bathhouses provides convenient cover for these political discussions, as participants can claim they were simply engaging in the sort of casual conversation that naturally occurs when people from different social classes find themselves sharing the same bathing facilities. But the political and criminal activities are just the beginning of the social complications you're about to encounter. Medieval bathhouses have developed reputations as locations where the normal rules governing sexual behavior are significantly relaxed, creating opportunities for romantic and physical encounters that would be scandalous if they occurred in more conventional social settings. The combination of nudity, privacy, and relaxed social atmosphere creates conditions that medieval moralists find deeply threatening to public order and religious virtue. The Catholic Church has spent considerable effort denouncing bathhouses as occasions of sin, where good Christians are tempted into behaviors that endanger their eternal souls. And watching the interactions around you, it's becoming clear why religious authorities are so concerned about these establishments. The romantic negotiations taking place in various corners of the bathhouse involve complex social calculations that go far beyond simple physical attraction. Medieval society's strict rules about marriage, social class, and appropriate behavior create demand for venues where people can explore relationships that wouldn't be acceptable in more public settings. Bathhouses provide the privacy and social cover necessary for these explorations, but they also create opportunities for complications that can affect entire families and communities. Some of the romantic activities you're witnessing involve people who are clearly married to other individuals, creating situations that medieval society considers adultery and that can have serious legal and social consequences if discovered by the wrong people. The bathhouse provides temporary escape from social surveillance, but the relationships formed here often continue outside these walls, leading to family conflicts, social scandals, and sometimes violence when betrayed spouses discover what's been happening. The commercial aspects of romantic activity in bathhouses represent another layer of social complexity that medieval authorities find particularly threatening. Some bathhouse patrons are clearly providing intimate services in exchange for payment, creating a commercial sex industry that operates under the convenient cover of legitimate bathing and personal care services. These commercial arrangements involve complex negotiations about services, pricing, and discretion that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of market dynamics and risk management. The providers of these services often work independently or as part of organized networks that coordinate their activities across multiple bathhouses and other venues throughout the city. The customers for these services include not just local residents seeking discretionary entertainment, but also traveling merchants, visiting nobles, and other transients who view bathhouse visits as opportunities to purchase experiences that aren't available in their home communities. This creates a tourism economy around bathhouse activities that brings money into local communities while also attracting the attention of authorities who are concerned about moral corruption and public order. Historians still argue whether medieval bathhouses were primarily legitimate businesses that happened to attract illegal and immoral activities, or whether they were deliberately designed to serve as covers for enterprises that couldn't operate openly in medieval society. What's certain is that the reputation of bathhouses as morally questionable establishments made them targets for religious and civic authorities, who viewed them as threats to social stability and Christian virtue. The gambling activities taking place in various areas of the bathhouse represent another category of illegal or morally questionable behavior that thrives in the privacy and relaxed atmosphere of these establishments. Medieval gambling laws are complex and often inconsistently enforced, but the amounts of money changing hands in some of the games you're observing suggest that significant financial transactions are occurring without proper oversight or taxation. The games themselves range from simple dice throwing to more complex card games that require skill, strategy, and considerable financial resources to participate meaningfully. Some of the players are clearly professional gamblers who make their living through these activities, while others appear to be wealthy amateurs who can afford to lose significant amounts of money for entertainment purposes. The social mixing that occurs during gambling activities creates opportunities for information exchange, relationship building, and business networking that extend far beyond the immediate gaming activities. Successful merchants use gambling sessions to establish relationships with potential business partners, gather intelligence about market conditions, and demonstrate their financial resources to potential investors or collaborators. But gambling also creates opportunities for disputes, accusations of cheating, and financial conflicts that can escalate into violence when large amounts of money are involved and participants have been drinking alcohol or using other substances that impair judgment and increase aggressive behavior. The Bathhouse staff has clearly developed procedures for managing these conflicts, but their methods involve intimidation and physical force rather than legal processes or conflict resolution techniques. The alcohol and drug use that accompanies many bathhouse activities creates additional layers of moral and legal complexity that medieval authorities find particularly troubling. Many bathhouses serve alcoholic beverages as part of their regular services, but the combination of alcohol consumption, nudity, gambling, and romantic activity creates conditions that religious and civic leaders consider inherently corrupting and dangerous to public order. Some bathhouses also provide access to various medicinal and recreational substances that have psychoactive properties, creating opportunities for experiences that medieval society considers morally questionable at best. The use of these substances often occurs in combination with other activities, creating complex interactions that can lead to unpredictable and potentially dangerous outcomes. The information economy that operates within bathhouse settings represents another aspect of these institutions that authorities find threatening to establish social and political order. The privacy and social mixing that occur in bathhouses make them ideal venues for gathering and exchanging information about political developments, business opportunities, personal secrets, and other intelligence that can be valuable for various purposes. Professional information brokers use bathhouses as neutral venues where they can meet with sources, negotiate for sensitive information, and conduct transactions that involve knowledge rather than physical goods. These activities often involve people from different social classes and political factions who wouldn't normally interact in more conventional social settings. The intelligence gathered in bathhouse settings can affect everything from business investments and marriage negotiations to political alliances and criminal prosecutions. The informal information networks that operate through bathhouses often provide more current and accurate intelligence than official sources, making them valuable resources for people who need to make important decisions based on the most current information available. As you observe these various activities unfolding around you, you're beginning to understand why medieval bathhouses occupy such a controversial position in their communities. They provide valuable services that people genuinely need and want, but they also create opportunities for activities that threaten established social, religious, and political order in ways that make authorities increasingly uncomfortable with their continued operation. The social tensions you're witnessing are building toward the kind of moral panic and official crackdown that will eventually lead to the closure of many bathhouses throughout Europe. Your innocent desire to get clean has placed you at the center of cultural conflicts that will shape European society for centuries to come, and your presence here might be more dangerous than you initially realized. As evening approaches and the shadows grow longer through the steam-clouded windows, you sense a shift in the atmosphere that goes beyond the usual social complications you've been observing. There's a tension in the air that has nothing to do with romantic intrigue or illegal gambling. It's the unmistakable feeling that something fundamental is about to go very wrong. The other bathers are becoming increasingly agitated. Conversations are taking on urgent, worried tones, and you're beginning to realize that your medieval bathhouse adventure is about to culminate in exactly the kind of disaster that will make you grateful for every modern convenience you've ever taken for granted. The first sign of impending doom comes when a breathless messenger bursts through the bathhouse doors, his face pale with terror and his clothes disheveled from running through the narrow medieval streets. The conversations around you immediately cease as everyone strains to hear his announcement, and the words he gasps out between desperate breaths make your blood run cold. There's been a death in the city, and the symptoms suggest plague. The authorities are beginning to investigate possible sources of contagion, and bathhouses are at the top of their list of suspicious establishments that might be spreading disease through their communal water systems. The reaction is immediate and panic-inducing. Patrons who were casually soaking and socializing moments before are now scrambling to exit the water as quickly as possible, creating a chaotic scene of splashing, shouting, and desperate attempts to locate clothing and personal belongings. The social hierarchies that governed bathhouse behavior throughout the day are instantly forgotten as survival instinct takes over and everyone becomes focused on escaping what they now perceive as a potential death trap. But escaping isn't going to be as simple as just climbing out of the water and walking away. The bathhouse owners, faced with the possibility of official investigation, legal liability, and complete business destruction, have made the calculated decision to temporarily lock down the facility to prevent anyone from leaving until they can assess the situation and develop a strategy for protecting their investment. The heavy wooden doors that welcomed you this morning have been barred from the outside, trapping everyone inside until further notice. The realization that you're now essentially imprisoned in a potentially plague-infected bathhouse with dozens of increasingly panicked medieval people creates a social dynamic that would challenge even modern crowd control experts. The steam-filled atmosphere that seemed relaxing and luxurious earlier in the day now feels suffocating and claustrophobic. The contaminated water that you've been soaking in for hours has transformed from a questionable hygiene choice into a potential source of deadly disease that you can't escape. The other trapped patrons are displaying the full range of human responses to life-threatening crisis situations. Some are maintaining medieval stoicism and trying to organize rational responses to the emergency, while others are dissolving into panic that threatens to spread through the group like the very contagion everyone fears. The social divisions that seemed so important earlier in the day are either completely forgotten as people unite against common danger, or intensified as different groups blame each other for the current predicament. The bathhouse staff, caught between their obligations to their employers and their own survival instincts, are struggling to maintain order while dealing with their own terror about potential disease exposure and legal consequences. Some are trying to calm the trapped patrons with reassurances that may or may not be based on accurate information, while others are clearly considering their own escape options and wondering whether loyalty to their employers is worth risking their lives. The medical practitioners who were performing their questionable procedures earlier in the day have suddenly become the center of desperate attention as people demand expert opinions about plague symptoms, disease transmission, and survival strategies. Unfortunately, medieval medicine's understanding of contagious disease is roughly equivalent to modern people's understanding of quantum physics, which is to say impressive sounding but ultimately useless for dealing with actual practical problems. The confined space amplifies every sound and emotion, creating an echo chamber of fear that makes rational thinking increasingly difficult. The stone walls that provided privacy and luxury earlier in the day now feel like prison walls that prevent escape from a potentially deadly situation. The steam that created a relaxing atmosphere has become a humid fog that makes breathing difficult and visibility poor, adding to the sense of disorientation and panic. Religious authorities, alerted to the potential crisis, arrive outside the bathhouse and begin conducting prayers and ceremonies designed to protect the community from divine wrath that they believe has manifested as plague punishment for the moral corruption occurring within these walls. Their chanting and incantations, audible through the stone walls, add an ominous soundtrack to the crisis and reinforce everyone's growing conviction that they're trapped in a situation that may not have a happy ending. The social conflicts that were simmering beneath the surface throughout the day are now erupting into open confrontations as stress and fear override normal behavioral constraints. People who were conducting illegal business earlier are now accusing each other of bringing divine punishment down on everyone. Romantic affairs that seemed exciting and transgressive in the afternoon now appear to be evidence of moral corruption that has attracted supernatural retribution. Historians still argue whether the plague outbreaks that frequently led to bathhouse closures were actually caused by the unsanitary conditions in these establishments or whether bathhouses simply became convenient scapegoats for diseases that medieval people didn't understand and couldn't control effectively. What's certain is that the association between bathhouses and disease transmission became so strong that many communities banned these establishments entirely, ending centuries of European bathing culture in a wave of public health panic. The economic implications of potential plague association are becoming apparent as trapped patrons calculate the financial and social costs of being identified as bathhouse customers during a disease outbreak. Being associated with these establishments during times of plague panic could result in social ostracism, business boycotts, and legal persecution that might destroy entire families' reputations and economic prospects. Some of the more entrepreneurial trapped patrons are already trying to negotiate immunity deals with bathhouse staff, offering bribes or making threats in attempts to secure preferential treatment when escape opportunities become available. These negotiations reveal the complex networks of obligation, influence, and corruption that characterize medieval urban society and demonstrate how quickly social cooperation can break down when survival is at stake. The deteriorating sanitary conditions inside the locked bathhouse are accelerating as panic-induced stress affects people's digestive systems and bladder control. The water that was already contaminated from a full day of use is becoming even more polluted as people lose control of various bodily functions under extreme stress. The air quality is declining as increased breathing rate and anxiety consume available oxygen while producing carbon dioxide and various stress-related chemical emissions. The temperature regulation systems that maintained comfortable bathing conditions are failing as the staff abandons their posts to deal with the crisis, creating uncomfortable temperature fluctuations that add physical discomfort to the psychological stress of imprisonment. The lighting systems, dependent on continued maintenance and fuel supply, are beginning to fail as evening approaches and normal operational procedures break down. As you huddle with the other trapped patrons, trying to find a corner of the bathhouse that offers some protection from the chaos while avoiding the increasingly contaminated water, you're experiencing the collapse of medieval social institutions in real time. The bathhouse that represented luxury, social opportunity, and personal care this morning has become a microcosm of societal breakdown where fear, desperation, and survival instinct override all the social rules and cultural norms that normally govern human behavior. The sounds outside suggest that word of the lockdown has spread throughout the community, attracting crowds of concerned family members, curious onlookers, and religious fanatics who view the situation as evidence of divine judgment against moral corruption. Their voices blend together in a medieval social media frenzy that spreads rumors, accusations, and increasingly dramatic interpretations of events that may or may not bear any resemblance to actual facts. Your medieval adventure is approaching its climax, and you're beginning to understand why people in previous centuries had shorter life expectancies and higher stress levels than modern populations. The simple desire to get clean has evolved into a comprehensive survival challenge that tests your physical endurance, social skills, and psychological resilience in ways that modern life rarely demands. The realization is dawning that escape from this situation will require not just physical survival, but also social and legal maneuvering that could affect the rest of your life in medieval society. Your bathhouse experience is about to end, but the consequences of your visit may follow you for years to come, assuming you survive the next few hours. The dim lights are flickering ominously, the trapped patrons are becoming increasingly desperate, and outside the barred doors, you can hear the sounds of a medieval community grappling with fear, superstition, and the very real possibility that their local bathhouse has become ground zero for the next plague outbreak. Your relaxing day of medieval hygiene is about to conclude with exactly the kind of dramatic crisis that makes historical documentaries so compelling and actual historical experience so terrifying. But as the night deepens and exhaustion begins to overwhelm panic, as voices grow quieter and movements slower, as the steam gradually dissipates and the water finally begins to cool, you find yourself settling into a strange kind of acceptance. The flickering candlelight casts gentle shadows on the ancient stone walls, and the soft murmur of whispered conversations creates an oddly peaceful backdrop to your extraordinary adventure. Perhaps this is how all great stories end, not with dramatic resolution, but with the quiet realization that you've survived something remarkable, something that has changed you in ways you're only beginning to understand. The medieval world, with all its dangers and discomforts, has shown you depths of human experience that modern life rarely reveals. You've witnessed the raw humanity that emerges when people are stripped of their usual protections and pretenses, and somehow, despite everything, you've found it beautiful. As sleep finally beckons and your eyelids grow heavy, you let yourself sink deeper into this ancient peace, knowing that when you wake, whether in medieval stone or modern comfort, you'll carry with you the memory of this extraordinary journey through one of history's most fascinating and terrifying institutions. The bathhouse may have challenged every assumption you held about cleanliness, safety, and civilization, but it has also revealed truths about human nature and social connection that transcend any particular era or culture. Rest now, brave time traveler, and let the gentle sounds of this medieval night carry you toward whatever dreams await those who have truly experienced the full complexity of human history.